Hey everybody, Tom Gentile here. Welcome to the Patterns and Profits podcast for July 26th. Yeah, the end of the month is here. Oh, let me get everything ready. So let's see. My water. That didn't sound like water, Tom. It is. It's water. It's from Waterloo Sparkling Water. I'm drinking cherry limeade today. That is not a sponsor. Okay. It's just I need some water and I like to have it sometimes sparkling. Oh, what a week. What a week. I don't think, in the last couple of weeks, I don't think I've seen as much news come out. I can't remember the last time so much news came out from the highest levels in the country as we've seen in the last couple of weeks. Did we enter bear market territory too? We're going to check into that also. I mean, I want to recap the news for everybody since the highs we've had, where we are now, and what I'm doing about it as a trader and investor. So let me take a sip of my Waterloo. There we go. So good. Let's see. Last podcast I did, it was a little while ago. It was a minute ago, right? We were discussing. I have my notes. We discussed the Biden debate. I also said, and I quote, "It's a do or die moment for his future." And of course, there's Trump that was challenging him to 18 holes. I said that too. All right. So what's happened since then? I mean, we've had the assassination attempt on former President Trump. Let's see. We've had a lot of conspiracy theories that how can this be just a lone gunman? I mean, you're hearing it from everybody. Everybody's kicking in their 2 cents worth. It's funny because you can't, it depends on who you're listening to. You're going to get a completely different story. All right. If you're listening to Fox News, you get one story. If you listen to MSNBC, you get another. Is CNN starting to come back to the center? Did someone finally figure out that there needs to be a news group that's down the middle? And I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that CNN's down the middle, but it would be a good idea if somebody actually had, other than local news, if someone could actually get down the center and tell it really like it is. You got to search far and wide for this kind of stuff. Oh, let's see. So we've had this assassination attempt. We had all of the all the soothsayers coming out talking about it. Biden's in, and he's in, and he's in, and he's looking forward to getting back on the campaign trail. That was a week ago. And of course, in politics, you're in until you're out, and you're out until you're in. All right. I mean, even Biden's own staff, they got a 1 minute head start before he made the announcement on X. Drops out of the race. Now VP Harris jumps in. And for a little bit of time there, we thought it was going to be an open convention. In fact, I believe former President Barack Obama said he's looking forward to an open convention. Well, that open convention got shut pretty quick, didn't it? More and more folks fell in behind Harris. I guess they believed it was better for their career to get behind Harris than to actually challenge her. She kicks it into full gear this week, takes it to Trump. I saw that part of that first campaign where she talks about the lowlives and the cheaters, and I don't remember. All I remember is, and she compared it to Donald Trump. That's how she came out. This is another one that's gonna obviously try to go against him. So apparently, Fred Trump III, nephew to former President Trump, has got a new book coming out. And somewhere in a couple of the pages of this book talks about some alleged racial slurs made by former President Donald Trump. Okay, we can talk about all the days in between all of this, but look, if you don't know it by now, folks, between last week and this week, things have completely flip-flopped. There were some newscasters that said 2 weeks ago, after the assassination attempt, that the race was over, that Trump was going to be elected president after the assassination attempt. And the way he projected himself after that assassination attempt. And then he goes rolling into the RNC, the Republican National Convention, and really does emerge the leader. And emerges looking like a leader. Okay, so then we have all this drama that's happened this week. And so you've got, the new face for the Democrats. And yeah, a lot of people say she's been around for 3 years, but let's face it, the VP position, you're really hidden. You don't do much. It's a thankless job. Go back and look. I don't care whether you're Republican or Democrat. Go back and look. Name the last 5 VPs. Right now, I don't think you can. I think you got to think about it, right? You got to think about it. You got to think about, all right, who was, we have Harris as Biden's VP. Before that, who was Trump's VP? Come on, I can see his face. I'm not great with names when I start thinking about Pence. Okay, then go back to Barack Obama, Biden. All right, then go back to George Bush. Dick Cheney. I remember, Dick Cheney because I remember him shooting somebody in the face. Oh, gosh. Before that, President Clinton, Al Gore. It just, they're in the shadows until they're not. And either they come out of the shadows or they disappear, as been the case for many vice presidents. So, the Democratic Party is going to mold her into the new coming, and she's going to come with, quote, her own ideas. Again, really hasn't done anything. She's gotten into politics. I'm not saying this to go to be for her or against her. I'm just stating facts. Okay, look at her record in the Senate. It doesn't matter though, folks. The mainstream media is going to put the full weight behind her because they hate Trump that much. And here's the thing that's really going to push this. The DNC's coming. It's about a month away. By then, I believe the polls are going to be in a dead heat on average. So I think it's going to come down to these battleground states, which is what it's been coming down to for, with the exception of Barack Obama. It's been coming down to these battleground states for as long as I can remember it. And I mean, the big question is, where does this leave the markets? Where does this leave you and I? All right. I got to mention this. So earlier, if I don't say it now, maybe I'll say it again. Earlier this week, I showed you a video, and in that video, I was talking about a website called polymarket.com, part of a cryptocurrency. And Polymarket actually does probable outcomes. You can bet on a variety of things. All right, you can bet on who's going to win the 2024 election. You can bet on who the Democratic nominee is going to be. You can bet on who the Democratic VP is going to be. You can bet on whether Biden's going to finish out the term. Right? I mean, what will Biden say during his dropout speech? There's so many different things that you can bet on Polymarket and put money into these events. All right, event-driven trades, bets, etc. All right, so here's where I'm going with this. Polymarket, like I said, I did it in a video earlier this week. the beginning of the week, Trump had a 65% probability of winning the presidency based on bets on Polymarket. That number has now dropped to 63%. It's down 2 points just in the last couple of days. Kamala Harris, which wasn't even on this in the beginning, or maybe she was so down so far. It was President Biden at the time. Now she now has a 33% chance of winning the presidential election. All right, so 63 and 33, now 63 and 34. They have Michelle Obama at third place with 3%. Apparently, Barack has not endorsed Kamala Harris as of this podcast. So once he does, I think she comes off of Polymarket, and it really is just a two-horse race. But with all of these things coming out, okay, meaning that Kamala's gonna continue to campaign, the DNC is coming up. To me, this is all gonna be, it's all gonna add points to her, and I think this is going to get closer and closer to who's going to win this presidential election. You know, when you look at Polymarket, really like the VP list looks like it's a closer race. I mean, it was Josh Shapiro was the number one most probable pick on Monday, and as we've gotten to the end of the week, he's dropped from, I think he was in the high 20s. He's dropped to 15%. Now Mark Kelly is the odds-on favorite. Okay, you can check all this out at polymarket.com. I just want to mention this before I continue. To me, there's no better place to find what I think is good information than those that are backing it with money. All right, those that are putting their money where their mouth is. All right, yeah, I mean, I look at polls, things like Real Clear Politics, which I think is a great polling place. But to me, the best poll is where you're putting your money where your mouth is. All right. So, again, where does this leave the markets? Where does this leave you and I? And that's what I want to jump to now. What's been going on with the markets here? Not just in this week. This week's been a bloodbath for the markets. Right, you take a look at, and I'm looking at the big three right now. I'm looking at the Dow. I'm looking at the S&P. I'm looking at the NASDAQ. I mean, folks, last week the Dow hit 41.5, almost hit 41.5 a week ago, a little more than a week ago. Since then, we've fallen below 40,000, kind of jumping back above and below that here. That's a 1,500 point swing in a week. All right. And, you know, I know immediately some of you are probably like, hey, man, that's only 3%, man, from the highs to now. Yeah, you're right. You're right. But you know what? I want you to look at it this way. I want you to look at where the big swings were in the market. Yeah, the big swings were last year. Let's talk this year. Let's talk about the last quarter. To me, that's the place we need to go. What's been happening in the last quarter? So if you back up to, let's call it May, June, July, the Dow was bottoming off of the moves in April. And then we kind of double bottomed there in that April to May timeframe. And I'm talking about, 37,000, 37,500 for the Dow. And since then, we've been on a rally. We ran up. We had a little bit of a pullback in May. Last 2 weeks of May came back down to above 38. But then look what happened in June. Look what happened the last 6 weeks. All right, from June 1st through to July, just last week, market's been on fire. Right, Dow made a big push higher, and since last week, though, we had an exhaustion move where the Dow jumped up in the morning, and we had this reverse candle that kind of happened, and we haven't been near that candle since then. And that was just a week ago. Big move back. All right, critical spot for the Dow right now is 40,000. I want you to hear me on this. That's round number support, but you know what else that is? That's the resistance number in May. And if any of your technicians, that whole term resistance becomes support. Well, when we hit 40K back in May, that's when we hit 40K. We dropped off of that down to around 38, 38.5. Then in June, we moved back above 40K and moved like a freight train to 41.5. We're back down to 40K again. So we're to a round number, and we're also hitting that resistance number. This is a critical level right here. I believe this is a very, very critical level. S&P 500. So I look at SPY. You guys all know I look at SPY. Weekly, I'm doing market updates. And SPY has also pulled back. It hasn't pulled back as much. Now, it's about, if you look at the Dow once again, the Dow has made a 38% pullback off of its highs from its May lows to its highs of last week. 38% pullback in literally 5 days, trading days. So there's that. The S&P hasn't pulled back as much. It's back about 30% off its low to high from April to July. Now, contrarians, okay? A contrarian trader is a trader that looks at the crowd and says, I want to be opposite of the crowd. It's not a popular thing to do, but it does work, right? Being popular in politics means you win. Being popular in the stock market, not so much. So as everyone's floating into AI, for instance, AI is, we've seen AI move around quite a bit. And this is going to be, companies like NVIDIA. NVIDIA is going to be one of those, where was NVIDIA? Almost at 140 back in July. And now we're trading in the one teens. All right. So, we're seeing some healthy pullbacks here, but this isn't where the junk is. I'm going to talk about where the junk is here in just a few minutes. But, back to the S&P, it's 30% off of its low to high. Contrarians think we're done for at least a few months. The contrarians think, and maybe they're thinking because of all the confusion, because of all of the changes that are happening in politics. I mean, think about this. Everyone's so polarized right now between what's going on with Donald Trump and what's going on with Kamala Harris that a lot of folks in Washington forgot Netanyahu's actually here. In fact, Netanyahu was probably twiddling his thumbs for a couple of days because there were staffers in D.C. that forgot he was here. They're like, oh, that's this week? That the Prime Minister of Israel's here this week? Anyway, here's the big one. Okay, it's not the Dow, it's not the S&P, it's the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ is off 8% from its highs just last week. Just last week. If you're sitting near a computer, take a look at QQQ, right? If you're not sitting near a computer, let me tell you about QQQ. And let me tell you what's been going on, because 2 weeks ago, the Qs were trading over 500, okay? And they've dropped down near 460. We're talking about more than 40-point drop in the last 2 weeks. That's 8% off of 500. You want a bigger number? How about 42? 42% is what the Qs have dropped when you look at their lows in April to their highs in July. So if you draw a line from the lows of April to the highs in July, and then you draw the pullback line, you're going to see 45%. 45% is what the lows are. All right. And finally, let me throw one more caveat at you. Okay. You ready? The money calendar. And that's my proprietary tool that gives me seasonality. The money calendar it was bullish in May when everyone said, sell in May and go away. And I said, nope, stay in May and make money today. It was bullish in June. It's been bullish for the last couple of weeks in July. But do you know where it is? as we head into the last full week of July. The leaves are turning, folks. Right now, we're going slightly bearish. Friday, 61% bearish. Next Monday, 73% bearish. And it gets worse as we get into the end of July. Yes, folks, there is a lot of yellow, green, and even some red on the screen as we head into August. This is seasonality. This is what's been happening the last 10 years. The last 10 years for the markets, and I'm talking about the most popular stocks. We're talking about heading into August. It gets a little bleak. How about ETFs? I got 9 ETFs. 9 ETFs. Today, 7 ETFs. Bearish. Okay. What are we talking about? We're talking about ETFs like Energy, XLE, like EWZ, DXJ, and they're short-term bearish, but they're still bearish. And next week, even more. There's 9 of them that pop up next week. I only follow a couple dozen ETFs. If I'm following 15 ETFs and 9 of them are bearish and none are bullish, then it's telling you there's seasonally the market likes a short-term pullback at this time. Okay. Good stuff to know. Okay, so where's the junk? Where's the junk at, Tom? What's causing the drag down right now in the NASDAQ? Because if you take a look, the Dow, the S&P, the NASDAQ, and, let's take Wednesday, for instance. Wednesday, just a day or two ago. If you take a look at the middle of the day on Wednesday, you're going to see a Dow that's down 1%, an S&P that's down nearly 2%, and a NASDAQ is down 3%. And that's just one day. That's just that day. How much am I suffering? During that day, my long-term stuff, I'm down 0.07% in my pretty much buy and hold account. I'm down 1.23% in my shorter term stuff. Cryptocurrency, I'm up. I'm up today in cryptocurrency, or up that Wednesday in cryptocurrency. So what am I doing differently? I'm going to get into that. But I want to tell you right now, one of the things I'm doing is I'm looking at, before I look at the junk, let's look at where the winners are in the NASDAQ. So, and I'm not talking about today. I'm talking about for the last quarter. Because if you go back and you look at the NASDAQ 100, you're going to see that a lot of stocks started this drag and pulling the big guys with them. But what about, I look at the NASDAQ 100 and I break it into 3 different areas. How many of you have heard the term that 10% of the people at your workplace are doing 90% of the work? And the other 90% are, there's a big group of them that are really just shuffling papers around, really not getting much done. And then there's about 10% to do nothing, that are there just basically saying, I dare you to fire me. I look at the markets the same way. So right now, when you look at the NASDAQ, there are 7 stocks in the NASDAQ 100 that are in the top 10% of their range in the last quarter. That means they are near the top of the heap. They're actually have been making money. You know who number 1 is? Sirius XM Radio. They are, of the NASDAQ 100, the strongest in the last quarter. Number 2, American Electric Power. Number 3, Intuitive Surgical. Then there's Vertex, Verisk Analytics, Amgen, and Cintas. 7 stocks really have been helping the NASDAQ stay high. Even though the NASDAQ's going lower, these guys are not getting dragged down yet. They are in the top 10% of their 3-month trading range. Now, most of that NASDAQ 100 is mixed. That means They're not really overbought. They're not really oversold. There could be more room to fall. There could be room to jump. That's that shuffling papers group that I'm telling you about. Then there's the one at the bottom. This is the 10%, the bottom 10% for the quarter. So that means that if you take a look at their 3-month highs and you take a look at their 3-month lows in the last three months, they're in the near the bottom. All right. They're the anchor. Some of these aren't big names, but some of these are. I mean, 13 weeks of pure dropping, and DoorDash is on that list. It's not a huge company, but Micron Technology is, because it's also in that list. PayPal's on that list. All right, PayPal has not had a great time of it. Earnings are coming out real soon. Let's see what they do. Walgreens is on that list, has been on that list. They're closing stores left and right. They are having a moment. All right. Who else is on this list? Oh, my goodness. CrowdStrike's on that list. How can that be? Because they literally took down, what was it, 30% of the S&P 500? They took down some good names because of a bug in one of their updates. And this is affecting literally everybody that I know. One of my programmers has been busy all week because he also contracts out for a company that works for CrowdStrike. And I just was able to have a conversation with him. He was able to take a breath because he's been busy trying to help fix the mess that CrowdStrike created. You know who else is at the bottom of this list? The absolute bottom of this list is Lululemon. Lululemon is at the bottom of this list. If you were to take a chart, if you were to take a look at a chart, you don't need to look at a chart of Lululemon. I'll walk you through it. The last 3 months, 3 months ago, this stock was trading at $475 a share. Okay. You know where it is now? It's in the twos, folks. It's at 269 is the last print that I saw on the screen. 269, down another 4% as I'm looking at it today. I mean, when you go from $475 down to 260, it's been cut in half off. And I'm not talking about their clothing line, which they're going to have to do something because people are tired of buying $300 stretchy pants, even though, and this is my wife talking, they fit better than the Chinese stuff. They probably do. They're probably better quality. But you know what? People are not going out and buying this stuff. They're not buying this stuff, and it shows in the stock price. But, you know, I know some of you, when you're thinking of NASDAQ, you're thinking, okay, Micron, yeah, NASDAQ, PayPal, NASDAQ, CrowdStrike, NASDAQ. Lululemon? Probably didn't know it was in the NASDAQ. But these are stocks that have been really being the drag on most of what we're seeing right now. So that brings me to what I'm doing. What do I do when a possible top has happened? We're looking for a correction. You've got a lot of this uncertainty going on. So I got to look at this 3 ways, and I think you should too. I got to look at this long-term, medium-term, short-term. Long-term. You know what long-term is for me? Long-term is the fact that we know we have a $34, $35 trillion deficit right now in the country, and I don't see it really going down. The interest alone, the interest we pay on this alone is bigger than the GDP of some countries. It's insane. I do worry about the generations to come. They got to pick this up. I mean, say what you want about President Clinton, but he did leave the country with a surplus. He did. And, we're talking about uh, the year 2000, folks. 24 years ago, we were at a surplus. We're now at a ridiculous amount. There are some things that we could do to drop that, but I just don't think they're going to happen. So we got to think what we have to do, not what the government might do or might not do, probably won't do. We got to think of what we have to do. So I like things, not companies. When there's uncertainty, I like things like metals, things like gold, silver, GLD, SLV. All right. I recently added to my position in GLD around 225. Yeah, GLD's gone down. It's had its days where it's gone down. But I'm looking at things a little bit. I'm looking at them differently than the way we might look at them. So GLD getting back up close to 225. I mean, this thing got to 230 and then it dropped. I added before it got to 230, and now we're back pretty close to where I added. But I like to average up on things, not average down. What other things am I talking about? How about digital assets like BTC, like Bitcoin, Ethereum? I've added to my BTC position. Okay. I'm also going to add to Ethereum. If we break above 35.50, I plan on adding to Ethereum. So that's long term. I like things. Okay. Companies could come with too much risk. Things, they don't move up as fast as companies like NVIDIA, but they don't move down as fast either. Also, things make sense to me during uncertainty. And believe me, I believe we're going to see a lot of uncertainty leading up to the election. Medium term. All right. As an option buyer, as an option spreader on the directional side, first of all, watch your money management. As the VIX goes higher, I buy less. Okay. VIX goes higher, I'm going to buy less. And so my directional trading, I want to be out a minimum of 30 days. I'm not trading zero DTEs. I'm not buying that stuff. It's junk. Okay. It's also got to be really expensive right now. In fact, if anything, I want to sell the short term. And I'm going to talk about that in a sec. But to me, if I'm going to buy options, I want a minimum of 30 days. I want time to be right. I also want to look at bearish opportunities as well. You can make money on the bearish side of the market. And finally, for the short term, and I said it already, but I'll say it again, sell premium. There's some expensive stuff to sell out there right now. Just have a rules-based way to do this, especially the medium, especially the short term. All right. And finally, we're in the thick of earnings right now. That's another reason why we're seeing increased levels of volatility. Now, on my last podcast, I said this, and I quote, I do think that we're going to have a soft quarter across consumables. Folks, it's already happening. All right. You know what else I said? It was about portfolio management, and it bears repeating very quickly. Traders, diversify by security, because not all stocks go up together. Traders, diversify by time. That means don't put all your trades in at one time. Traders, diversify by direction. That means you can make money when things go down. Traders, diversify by system. Be a master of different rules-based systems. They don't have to be in the same direction. They don't have to be in the same strategy. They don't have to be with the same time to duration. And finally, as I said it, strategy, option strategies. There are bullish, bearish, or neutral. There are also time-based strategies that work for you and time-based strategies that work against you. So as we go into these areas of uncertainty, I want you to think about what I've just said to you. All right. Hey, thanks for joining me this week. Have a great weekend. I'll be back again next week. I'll see you then. Bye, everyone.